Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, advert free, assuming I remember to actually turn the monetization off this time. Advert free, thanks to the support that you generate for me on Patreon. How about that new intro? I realise it's a couple of weeks old now, and you seem to be a bit divided on it. Some people really like the new intro music, some people really don't. It's probably fair to say that most of you, whether you like the new intro music or not, miss the old intro music. And I do too. It was a cracking tune composed by John Williams for the mostly unseen Steven Spielberg movie 1941. But I didn't have the license for it, I didn't have the rights to be using it, and I couldn't afford to continue using it. So I tried, by the way. I did attempt to get in touch with Sony Music's licensing arm and inquire as to how much I would have to pay to license the march from 1941 so I could continue to use it in Mingles with Jingles. I did try, but you wouldn't believe how ridiculously difficult it is to actually license a piece of music to use in a YouTube video. You'd think, given how aggressively record companies go after people who use their stuff on YouTube without permission. I mean, if you use 30 seconds of an unlicensed piece of music in a 30-minute video, and the record companies catch the smell of it, they will claim your entire video, all 30 minutes of it, and you will not make a penny from that video. And anything generated by advertising on that video goes straight into the pockets of the record companies. That's when they don't just shut your channel down entirely. Given how aggressively they go after their interests where this sort of thing is concerned, you'd think they would be delighted for YouTube content creators to approach them and offer to pay money to legally acquire licenses to use their music. You'd think so, and you'd be very wrong. I actually approached Sony Music with the intention, first of all, just finding out who owns the rights on a particular piece of music is a bloody nightmare. But I eventually figured out that it was Sony Classical. So after digging around on the Sony Classical website and trying to find out just exactly who the hell I had to contact for licensing rights, I eventually ended up on the correct website. I mean, it took half an hour of digging around. They don't make it easy to find out how to legally use their music. And even when you know which website you're supposed to be applying to, it's not just a simple case of which music do you want to use, this one, how long do you want to use it for, because there are different terms as well, of course. You don't just acquire the rights to a piece of music. They want to know, do you want to use it just once? Do you want to use it for a year? Do you want to use it for 5 years? Or do you want to use it forever? And the costs increase exponentially the more you want to use a particular piece of music. And they're not cheap just for using it once. We're talking thousands of dollars here. You know, not like 50, not 100, thousands. Again, depending on the piece of music that you want to use. But it wasn't even as simple as that. First, you had to create an account on the Sony Music website before they will even entertain any offers that you make towards them for licensing their music. So I thought, okay, I'll make an account, because I genuinely wanted to know how much it was going to cost me to continue using that same piece of music in Mingles with Jingles. But just making an account isn't simple. I mean, you wouldn't believe what you're talking about, Jingles. I have accounts on multiple websites. You just input your email address and a password and bingo, account created. Yeah, well, it might be that simple for everything else, but not when you're trying to create an account on the Sony Music website so that you can legally license music. You can't just make an account. You have to get their permission to make an account before you can even start inquiring as to making music licensing requests. And they never replied. So I tried, you wouldn't believe how hard I tried to actually go ahead and legally obtain the license to use the old Mingles with Jingles intro music. But Sony are just not interested in making money out of me. Not legally, anyway. It's almost as if the record companies are making more money from claiming the monetization on entire videos that just so happen to include 30 seconds of their content, that they're just not interested in legally licensing the music in the first place. I don't know why I should be surprised by any of this, of course. I mean, we're talking about record company executives here. A lower form of human life has yet to be discovered. I'll give you an example of the kind of shit that record company executives like to pull. In 2014, there's a YouTube channel that goes by the name of The Oral Nauts, and they published a video. This video was the final scene in the original Star Wars movie, right after Luke Skywalker has blown up the Death Star. And he and Han Solo are accepting their Hero of Yavin awards from Princess Leia in a massive ceremony. The Massassi Temple throne room is packed with rebel troops, all standing to attention, and Han and Luke march right down the centre of the procession, stand to attention, receive their medals from Princess Leia, and everybody bursts into applause. And it's a great scene, but it's only a great scene because of the John Williams music that accompanies it. There is no dialogue in this scene whatsoever. It's just Luke and Han walking into a throne room, having medals thrown over their necks, and then they turn around and everybody bursts into applause. What the Oral Nauts did was they removed the music from that scene, and without the music you suddenly realise just how awkward that scene is, because it's deathly silence that's broken only by the sound of people shuffling around, some footsteps echoing through this huge throne room, the occasional cough from a rebel trooper extra who happened to have a cold that day. Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca, occasionally roars and growls at something, and that's it. It's incredibly awkward, and it's only the John Williams music that makes the scene as powerful as it is. But the Oral Nauts removed the music. That's the whole point of the video. Now, the music in that scene is owned by Warner Music Group. What do you think they did when this video went up? The video's had 4 million views, by the way. A video that does not contain any music. Yep, they hit it with a copyright claim. They were specifically claiming for something that wasn't even there. That was the point of the video. But here's the thing. More than 99% of all monetization claims leveled against YouTube videos are actually done through YouTube's automated content ID system. The record companies themselves are not usually directly involved in making the monetization claim. But because there was no music in this video for the content ID system to flag, this video was actually manually claimed by Warner Music. So that means some record executive at Warner Music Group actually sat through this video, which doesn't contain any Warner Music Group music, and decided that they had to instruct their legal team to initiate a copyright claim against it. Now, in the interests of transparency and to be completely fair to Warner Music Group, not that they deserve it, the video is not entirely music-free. At the beginning of the video, there's a musical composition which was mixed by the Oral Nauts themselves based on one of the tracks from Holst's Planets sequence. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with Star Wars or John Williams. And right at the end of the video, there's 4 seconds of the Star Wars end title theme. The Star Wars end title theme is actually part of the throne room and end title theme. See, what happens is Han and Luke turn around, everybody bursts into applause, and the throne room sequence segues into the end title sequence as the credits roll. So you've got that 1 4-second clip where the music suddenly comes back just so you can see exactly what it is you've been missing. And then it cuts to the Oral Nauts end card. So 4 seconds of John Williams music, but it's the end title music, and what Warner Music Group claimed as the basis for their monetization claim was that the video illegally used the Star Wars main title. And it doesn't. So, yeah. You know, this is the kind of thing that YouTube content creators have to put up with when it comes to putting music, or in the case of the Oral Nauts, taking music out of their videos. And at the same time, when you try to approach the record companies directly in order to offer to pay them money to legally license their music for use on YouTube, they just ignore you. Anyway, going back to a topic that was raised at the end of last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, which generated a huge response in the comments. I had no idea so many people thought that, how can I put this? I don't know whether I should be upset or happy about this, but apparently a whole lot of you out there think that my unique take on the use of the English language and profanity within the English language is part of what makes me who I am. The idea that I was going to start censoring myself to make myself a little bit more family friendly, so many of you were up in arms, outraged, if I can use that word, at the idea that I was going to stop swearing altogether whenever I was editing these videos. And let's keep things into perspective here. It's not like I've been dropping F-bombs in every other sentence that comes out of my mouth. I'm just not that kind of YouTube channel. I do occasionally use profanities, but only when I feel the situation warrants it. It's not like a PG-13 movie, for example, where you get to use the word fuck once, and the director has to choose. Okay, where can we employ it for maximum effect? It's not like that. If I feel the situation warrants it, you'll know because you'll hear me swearing. I certainly don't plan a video around it. But I think you're right. My occasional use of profanities is part of what makes the channel what it is, and I shouldn't really been too surprised that so many of you were in favour of me continuing to do it because, well, you're here because you like the way that I do my videos, so it shouldn't really come as any surprise that most of you are perfectly happy with the level of profanity that's in my videos. Just enough, just in time. Because, yeah, well, it's like anything. If you overdo it, it gets old. So I'm not planning on changing anytime soon. And if that means that you're not really comfortable watching my videos in the company of minors, your children or your grandchildren, well, that's the kind of channel this is, I'm afraid, and you probably shouldn't be watching it in the company of young children. And again, it's not like I swear all the time. Again, that would be overdoing it. It's not even like I swear in every video I do. But every now and then, I like to keep you guessing. And I've no plans to change anytime soon either, so you can rest assured of that. So, what have I been up to since the last episode of Mingles with Jingles? Well, I've been playing Subnautica. That was this weekend's casual Saturday video. And it seemed to be very, very popular, which is gratifying. It's always nice to know whenever I try doing something a little bit outside of my comfort zone, that so many of you are prepared to watch it and enjoy it, despite the fact that it's not World of Tanks, World of Warships, you know, that sort of game. And I was very surprised that I liked Subnautica as much as I did because, well, it's basically Minecraft but underwater. Well, it's more than that. And I didn't like Minecraft at all. I realise I'm not saying it's a bad game. Minecraft is a work of genius, but I don't really enjoy it. Subnautica takes the building aspects of Minecraft and adds the survival horror elements of, well, any number of different survival horror games. You see, you think you're playing a survival exploration game, and you are, but that survival exploration game very, very quickly turns into a survival horror game. And well, you know what my track record's like with survival horror games. I had to stop playing Alien Isolation, for example. But Subnautica isn't quite as relentless as Alien Isolation. There's always a safe place you can retreat to in Subnautica. There's only certain areas of the ocean that are incredibly dangerous, and the danger level scales the further away from the safe shallows and the deeper you go. So you can manage the level of fear that you're going to experience when you're playing Subnautica. You can't really do that in Alien Isolation because, well, as soon as you get as far as I got, which was the medical wing, from that point on, you're constantly being hunted. So I can deal with Subnautica in a way that I was never really able to deal with Alien Isolation. Which is gratifying because I really want to keep playing Subnautica because it's absolutely fantastic. Another game that Subnautica really reminded me of, even though they are really very, very different games, was Lone Echo. I've been doing a video playthrough of Lone Echo in virtual reality. I think I got 5 episodes in and had to stop. Most unfortunately because I got a new PC. And, well, it wasn't just as simple as reinstalling Lone Echo, because the save files aren't saved to a cloud the way they are in just about every other game in creation. When you want to install the game, it doesn't matter what PC you then reinstall the game on, your save files are just downloaded along with the game. It doesn't work like that in Lone Echo. So you'll be very pleased to know that I have actually managed to retrieve my save game. So I will be continuing to play Lone Echo, and we'll be putting more Lone Echo videos up at some point in the very near future. Another thing I've been doing this weekend happened completely by accident. After putting in a good 3-4 hour Subnautica session, I thought I'm going to get some food, something to drink, and then I'll sit down and see who's streaming on Twitch. And I had a look through the channels I was following, and I saw that Flamu was streaming World of Warships, and I love watching Flamu play World of Warships. So I made myself comfortable, flashed up his channel, and he was only streaming the Kings of the Sea tournament. I'd completely forgotten that it was happening this weekend. Normally I get contacted by the organisers in advance, asking for my help to promote the fact that the tournament's taking place. It turns out I did, but it's been more than a few days since I checked my business email address, so I kind of missed it. But anyway, I tuned in completely by accident. Got to watch some of the quarterfinal games, where Odin Mortis were knocked out in the quarterfinals, so that was a shock upset. And Omni very nearly lost the semi-finals to Total War Alliance. Total War Alliance actually won the first game, and it ended up with Omni having to win 3 of the 5 games in order to advance to the finals, and it went right down to the last match, which was a nail-biting game, but Omni managed to pull it off, and they've qualified for the finals, which are going to take place next weekend. The other semi-finalist winner was the hilariously named team Wargaming Pay to Win. So next Saturday, this weekend, the 2 teams that were knocked out in the semi-finals are going to be competing for 3rd place, followed by the final between Wargaming Pay to Win and Omni. The top 3 teams, so the 2 finalists and whoever wins the 3rd place qualifier, will then play again on the next day, on the Sunday, where they're going to be competing against the top 3 teams from the Kings of the Sea tournament on the North American server for the title King of the Atlantic. It's the first time they've done this. So that's next Sunday, the 4th of February. So, the King of the Atlantic tournament showdown between the 3 best World of Warships teams on the North American server and the 3 best World of Warships teams on the EU server. Sunday, 4th of February 2018. Why is that date? I don't know. There seems to be something significant about that date, and I can't quite put my finger on it. What is it again? Oh yeah, isn't that the date of the Super Bowl? That is the date of the... Yes, it is. Now I appreciate that if you live outside of the United States of America, you probably didn't know, and you probably care even less. But if you do live in the United States of America, Super Sunday is kind of a big deal. I don't think too many people are going to be tuning in to watch the King of the Atlantic tournament in World of Warships, not while the Super Bowl's going on. I don't know. I mean, National Football League, you had one job. One job. Don't put the Super Bowl on while people are streaming World of Warships. I mean, seriously, look at the trouble that you're in now. You're going to have to cancel Justin Timberlake's halftime show. You're going to have to refund tens of thousands of Super Bowl tickets to angry fans. You're going to have to tell the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles that there's not going to be a Super Bowl this year because everybody's sitting at home watching World of Warships. I mean, seriously, how do you fuck that up? I don't know. I just hope that they learn from their mistake and next year there won't be quite such an obvious broadcasting clash. Well, anyway, I wanted to finish off this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. This is something that I've been meaning to do for quite some time, but I either forget about it or I never seem to get around to doing it. I read a book, shamefully I'd like to say recently, but it was actually a couple of months ago. It was called Neptune's Inferno, The Naval Battle of Guadalcanal by James D. Hornfisher. Now, I cannot recommend this book enough, and I certainly don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm going to be reading to you today from the prologue. Because obviously as a Navy veteran, it's astonishing how little things have changed in the last 70 years between the experience of those sailors during the 100-day campaign for the island of Guadalcanal. And Guadalcanal, of course, most people associate with the US Marines, and it was a major US Marines victory. But what a lot of people don't realise is that the naval battle of Guadalcanal, the US Navy lost 3 sailors for every single Marine who was lost ashore. They took far more losses than the Marines did. And the losses on both sides, as far as the navies were concerned, were about equal. The Japanese lost 24 major warships. The Americans lost 24 major warships. Aircraft losses were almost equal. America lost 436, Japan lost 440. But US Marine and Army killed in action ashore were 1,592 out of the 60,000 troops that were landed. But the number of Americans killed at sea topped 5,000. And it's those naval losses and naval actions that the book focuses on, although it does mention the actions of the Marines and Army ashore, because it's impossible to talk about the naval battle of Guadalcanal unless you keep it within the broad context of the battle as a whole, which lasted 100 days, by the way. It was one hell of a campaign. But it's the prologue of the book that I wanted to read from today because, well, as I said, it's astonishing how little has changed in the 70 years since this battle took place. So, this is from Neptune's Inferno, the US Navy at Guadalcanal by James D. Hornfisher. On Friday, August the 7th, 1942, 82 US Navy ships manned by 40,000 sailors, shepherding a force of 16,000 US Marines, reached their destination in a remote southern ocean and spent the next 100 days immersed in a curriculum of cruel and timeless lessons. No fighting navy had ever been so speedily and explosively educated. In the conflict that rolled through the end of that trembling year, they and the thousands more who followed them learned that technology was important, but that guts and guile mattered more, that swiftness was more deadly than strength, and that well-packaged surprise usually beat them both. That if it looked like the enemy was coming, the enemy probably was coming, and you want to tell somebody, maybe even everybody, that the experience of battle forever divides those who talk of nothing else but its prospect from those who talk of everything else but its memory. Sailors in the war zone learned the arcane law of bad luck and its many manifestations, from the sight of rats leaving a ship in port, a sign that she will be sunk, to the act of whistling while at sea, inviting violent winds, to the follies of opening fire first on a Sunday or beginning a voyage on a Friday. They learned to tell the red-orange blossoms of shells hitting targets from the faster flashes of muzzles firing the other way. That hard steel burns. That any ship can look shipshape, but if you really want to take her measure, check her turret alignments. That torpedoes and sometimes radios keep their own fickle counsel about when they will work. That a war to secure liberty could be waged passionately by men who had none themselves, and that in death all sailors have an unmistakable dignity. Some of these were the lessons of any war, truisms relearned for the 100th time by the latest generation to face its trials. Victory always tended to fly with a first effective salvo. Others were novel, the product of untested technologies and tactics unique to the circumstances of America's first offensive in the Pacific. That you could win a campaign on the backs of stevedores expert in the lethal craft of combat-loading cargo ships. That the little image of an enemy ship on a radar scope will flinch visibly when heavily struck. That rapid partial salvo fire from a director-controlled main battery reduces the salvo interval period, but complicates the correction of ranges and spots. In the far South Pacific, you were lucky if your sighting report ever reached its recipient. Even then, the plainest statement of fact might be subject to 2 or more interpretations of meaning. You learned that warships smashed and left dead in the night could resurrect themselves by the rise of morning, that circumstances can conspire to make your enemy seem much smarter than he ever really could be, and that as bad as things might seem in the midst of combat, they might well be far worse for him. That you could learn from your opponent's success if your pride permitted it, and that the best course of action often ran straight into the barriers of your worst biases and fears. That some of the worst thrashings you took could look like victories tomorrow. That good was never good enough, and if you really want to make Neptune laugh, all you have to do is show him your operations plan. Yeah, it's astonishing how little has changed in the course of the last 70 years. The book's also full of some hilarious quotes from some extremely colourful characters. Admiral Bull Halsey, for example, was once quoted as saying that he was perfectly willing to divide the Pacific Ocean with Japan. We'll take the top, Japan can take the bottom. Love it. Anyway, I'm going to quit it there because I really don't want to ruin the book for you, but I cannot recommend this enough. Once again, Neptune's Inferno, The Naval Battle of Guadalcanal by James D. Hornfisher. And that is it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.